Well, hello and welcome to the Old Guy in the Club podcast. I am the old guy in the club. That is another old guy quite often in a club. And it's been a long time since we've been here. It's been
Or been in
a
a club.
month and 3 days since our last podcast. And yeah, we will definitely get into that as to why that was the case. And we have a ton of stuff to talk about today. There is a lot going on, so we will get there. Rob Zilla, why don't you tell us what's going on in your world?
Not a whole lot. It's been an interesting month. First of all, it's good to see you. It's good to be back. Thank goodness we remembered how to do this. Hopefully,
We'll see.
Yeah, I am looking forward to interacting and engaging with some of our regulars, hoping that they got the message that we are back. Hopefully, we don't take this long of a hiatus again. That's, fingers crossed that won't be necessary. But as we get into it a little bit later on in the show, we will explain why you were otherwise, occupied. I had a few things going on, and sadly, we just needed to put this on the back burner for a couple of weeks. Well, what we thought was going to be for a week, and then extended and then re-extended. But luckily, all of that's behind us, and here we are. And it's really good to see you, dude.
It's good to see you too, man. It has been too long, and yeah, like a lot of stuff has happened in the last month, and we will talk about most of it.
Yes. We should probably explain where Neil is at the moment, and the answer to that is we don't know.
What's this emoji?
Yeah.
That one? Like, we don't know. Yeah, no clue. But I think we can entertain people without him. Screw that guy.
We will certainly do our best. So, again, welcome to the Old Guy in the Club podcast. Your comments, questions, and concerns are welcome. So feel free to light up the chat room. We are watching it to the best of our ability and would love to engage with you and interact with you the best way we know how. So that's what the chat room is for. And if you haven't had a chance to, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you missed any part of the show, don't forget that we re-air these every Monday wherever you get podcasts.
Actually, that's not true, which
Okay.
I probably should have told you.
Oops.
We used to do Mondays when we would record on Fridays. Now, because we record on Wednesdays, we release on Fridays.
All right. Well, even better. So you don't have to wait until next week. You don't have to get it until next week. You'll get it on Friday.
Fascinating stuff here, the Old Guy in the Club. Yeah, I don't know who's in the chat, if there is anyone in the chat. Should we, what do you want to talk about until people get here? Oh, wait. No, we don't. I thought there was someone in the chat. There's not.
The show is Old Guy in the Club, and based on the graphic underneath your name, you are the old guy, which means this is your show. So yeah, you lead.
Yeah, but
follow.
I mean, not really. You know that.
Okay. Well, how's your 4th of July?
Yes, we finally have someone in the chat. Hello, Jennifer. Yes, I would love tacos.
Same.
Actually, hey, Lisa. So so for Father's Day, sorry, I'm not answering your question, but tacos came up and now my train of thought is gone. So July 4th, I literally did nothing.
All right.
Nothing. So what did you do? Because it's got to be more than nothing.
I got on and I was for 36 hours. And I had a blast.
Did you?
Now, yeah. So for those of you that, Justin and I have about 11 years of history and through our collective group of friends. And I think it's fair to say that Cabo San Lucas is our collective happy place.
Correct.
It's kind of where we would go as a group for many an occasion or for no occasion at all. So I'm on the air Friday night. I'm doing a show. I'm working till midnight, and I get a text from a good friend of ours who I shall remain nameless, or I shall keep nameless. But as a hint, he was in season 1, episode 1 of Rehab Party at the Hard Rock. So I got a text from him, says, going to Cabo, got a room for you. Flight leaves at 8:30. You've got 2 hours to decide.
No.
So if you now, Justin knows this about me. For those, Jennifer knows this about me, but for the rest of our friends in the chat room, I am very much a planner. So much so that my sister actually calls me Danny Tanner, modeled after the dad from Full House, because I keep lists and I plan for literally everything. And
not Danny Planner?
Yeah, well, Danny Planner, yes. And somehow, in the span of thinking about all the reasons why I shouldn't go, I started thinking about all the reasons why I can, and I pulled the trigger. And believe me when I tell you that I got all of my work done and some of Monday's work done. I came home. I threw some clothes in a bag because I knew it was only going to be 2 hours. So 2 days. It was going to be Saturday, Sunday, flying back Monday. So there wasn't a whole lot to pack. Set my alarm and jumped on that flight, went to Cabo, enjoyed it, stayed at what is currently now known as the Walt, but used to be resort at Pedregal. For the rest of us, we fondly know it as Capella, and stayed there for 2 days, flew back, did my show Monday night. That was my last night of filling in. I went straight from the airport, came home, picked up my car. Actually, Jen picked me up from the airport in my car, dropped her off at the house, continued on to work, did what that was, and then here we are. So that was my 4th of July. I was in Cabo San Lucas.
So much better than mine.
Wait till I tell you what we did.
Oh, God. Nothing. You did absolutely nothing, did you?
We did absolutely nothing.
Oh,
and it felt amazing. So much so, I'm not going to say that we did this. I'm not going to say that we did this. But there might have been a Leonardo DiCaprio marathon on Stars, and we may have gone from Catch Me If You Can into Titanic while room service and bottles of red wine were involved. So, there was a whole lot of relaxing and decompressing. And honestly, after the year everybody's had collectively to various levels, I think everybody needs a little something like that. Their own version of that. Just
did they
decompress?
Did they leave the churros on the menu?
The churros are on the menu, but they are not the same churros that we.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I'm out. Hello, Darth Vader, in our chat. I said hello to you earlier today. Nice of you to stop by and say hello.
While we're at it, I want to say hello to DJ Showtime, Darth Vader. Good to see you again. Lisa S, hello. Jilly Bean, hi. Jenna, hello. Keone, what up? Who am I missing? That's it. Oh, Jen saying I'm ordering 1 taco from Taco Bell. Do you want one?
The answer to that is no. The technical answer is no. He doesn't want one.
Yeah. Also, I don't have 7 cents for the 1 taco. You could buy an entire Taco Bell franchise. Like one time we were in a Taco Bell drive-thru and bought $100 worth of Taco Bell, and it filled an entire trunk of a Cadillac. That's not a joke. That actually happened in Orlando.
Oh my God.
So yeah, Justin, it was really nice. And it was nice for me to break out of my own personal pattern. Speaking of Orlando, Fo.
Wow, what are the odds?
I manifested J-Fo. It's good to see you, Mr. Forrest. So good to see you.
We got a little lag here. Is that me or you? What do you think?
It could be me. There's really no way to tell. Maybe it's Jen ordering. Maybe it's Jen ordering Taco Bell from the Taco Bell app. Slowed down the house.
Jen, get off the Wi-Fi, Jen.
Fader's saying that it looks like me. Why don't I do this? Why don't I jump out and jump right back in? I'll just give me 30 seconds. I'm just going to refresh the screen. Be right back.
Well, wait, hold on. Before you do that, I was going to say everyone has to ask me questions, so I'm not just sitting here alone. So yeah, if you guys want to ask me any questions, you just go right ahead. Well, luckily Zilla is back, because that was the most terrifying 8 seconds of my life.
No,
that was probably like 2 seconds.
I refreshed the browser, hoping that that'll clear it up. And if we need to do something more extreme, then we'll do that later. But I figured we'll do the easiest thing first.
Yeah, turn it off, turn it back on again. That always works, right? My lighting is different, Jenna. I don't know. I didn't do anything different that I'm aware of. But anyway, so what I was about to say before I came on this, I was talking to little Tim, my youngest son, earlier yesterday, and he told me that for dinner today, he wanted steak and mashed potatoes and corn. So who am I to deny a child some steak and mashed potatoes and corn?
When you're dinner, order your favorite things in the world for dinner.
I lost you there. Say that again, dude. Sorry.
I said, who are you to deny him, especially when he's asking for some of your favorite dinner items for dinner?
Correct. So my parents had gotten me this like Wagyu sampler from this Kansas City cattle something online. So I had this thing sitting in my freezer. So I whipped out 2 top sirloins from this place, defrosted them overnight, just throw them on the Blackstone. I undercooked them a little bit, but the flavor was incredible.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, I'm not really a sirloin guy. I like a filet. Always have, always will. I just like the texture of a filet. So it was a little tough for me, but the flavor was incredible. It was really, really good. And I do make the greatest mashed potatoes in history. So
what's your secret?
There is no secret. It's simple.
Okay.
It's Yukon Gold potatoes.
Okay.
A very large amount of butter. A lot of salt and pepper. I do black pepper. Some people do white pepper. And heavy cream. And I mash them with a masher. I don't whip them. You got to have little lumps.
All right.
Whoops, hold on. Oh, I just knocked you out. That was my fault. I hit the space bar. Apparently the space bar gets rid of Zilla. I wish I knew this.
I honestly thought that my connection dropped, and I'm like, or this was my last show, and this was your way of telling me. So, yeah, I love a good potato. I love a good mashed potato. That Robuchon potato recipe of equal parts butter, cream, and potato. You just can't go wrong.
I didn't know that's what that was.
Yeah, that is the potato recipe from Michelin star winner Joel Robuchon. It's
okay. Well, I'm glad I'm in good company, because that's how I've always made them. But yeah, they're so good. And then you got to get the can of corn and throw it on top there.
Okay.
Got to go on top. You can't leave it on the side. It's got to go on top.
You don't do the old.
You make a little reservoir and just dump it in there.
I have for the longest time been mixing my mashed potatoes and corn together, like that's just my thing. Get a little lump of corn, and then get a little lump of mashed potato, add some corn, and there you go.
Yes, sir.
Every once in a while, I might. They have this everything but the elote seasoning over at Trader Joe's. So it's got a little bit of that lime, a little bit of the ground up chili de arbol in there. Mm-hmm. So it just can't, like corn is great. Elote flavored corn is even better. I mean, that's kind of redundant, elote flavored corn, but Elote is a preparation of corn, but it's just, you got to love a good seasoning. Listen, cooking tip for everybody in the chat room: don't be afraid to season your food. No one's going to be mad at you.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just whipped that up in like an hour before we started here, and yeah, had a great dinner. I'm very happy.
Love it.
So we haven't been here in a month. It's been just over a month, and things just got crazy. Things got crazy. We had just planned on taking 1 week off, and I have a lot going on with work. And then kind of after that first one, I had a bunch of stuff going on with family. And kind of in that month to 3 week ago period, we decided to kind of make some moves on the on white label. And we basically decided to we wanted, coming out of pandemic, we wanted to kind of
take a step back, because you're explaining this like I know, I do know what white label is, but for some of our other friends, they may not know what white label is and what it is you do with it. So let's just frame that a little bit, please.
Okay. So my day job, or like my afternoon job, because I have a number of jobs, my afternoon job is I own a talent agency where I represent DJs or disc jockeys around the country.
Okay.
And so I've been doing this. I've had the white label agency for about 7 years now. And I'm not typically a big marketing guy. Like, I'm just kind of an operations guy. And so when I started white label, it was just kind of a blah name. It doesn't really evoke any kind of emotions or anything like that. It's and the brand was very vanilla, like just not anything exciting about it. But I didn't care, because all I wanted to do was get my DJs work, right? So I just wanted to get them work, get them, make them money. That's it. And that's what I did for 7 years, almost six and a half years. So coming out of pandemic, we said, you know what? Let's try to pick up some new artists, some new DJs coming out of this. There were some people that, you know, were either free agents or not happy where they were. And we wanted to kind of curate a new roster of really high quality DJs.
Yeah,
at the same time,
build upon the already high quality roster that you had, because from my understanding, you already have this great roster, and the changes that you've made thus far are just adding people to it, which is the best part.
Yeah. So I mean, the original roster from white label is it was 6 people at the time of pandemic. It used to be 12. It used to be 8. It used to be 11. Like, it's gone up and down for the last however many years. But, you know, we've had Neil Jackson and E-Rock and Romeo Reyes, Chris Masterson, Tina T, Della Chappelle. So Keone in the chat just asked who the first DJ was on white label. And that would be Mr. Chris Masterson. He was our first DJ. And I'm actually going to, someone in Neil's chat earlier was asking, how do you start an agency? So I have it on my list right up there to kind of talk about how that happens. I do. I always have a list. But anyway, so coming out of pandemic, we wanted to kind of grow that roster. And at the same time, we figured, you know what? The brand is a little stale. Not that it's bad or anything, but it just needed a little pizzazz to it. So we just decided to kind of jazz it up, come up with a new name, a new brand, a new feel for the brand. And we did decide that we didn't just want to be another, you know, 3-letter agency, a CAA, a UTA, you know.
SKM. Well, that's 4 letters.
Wait, what?
I said SKM. Oh, wait, that's letters.
Oh, well, I thought you said SGM. Like, you just glitched in the middle of it. But yeah, so I mean, actually, I love Scam's name. I think I love the play on words. I really do.
It fits. You wanted to be something different.
Yeah. So, you know, we were kind of coming up with names, and we had some names like Inner Circle, which I kind of liked. That was we were probably going to go that way. And then I think it was Matt Mira, which I'll get into that as well. I think Matt suggested, what about 3? Well, actually, no. So the first kind of out there name that someone suggested was group hug. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, like, doesn't everybody love a group hug? Like, doesn't that feel good? And I was like, yes, it does feel good. However, that's too far out there for me. I can't call the company group hug. And then someone said, well, doesn't this give you the same feeling? 3-day weekend. And it was one of those like, that's it. Like we knew. We just knew that was it. Because who doesn't love a 3-day weekend? Keone, I actually believe it was Matt Mira that came up with 3-day weekend. It could have been Neil. I think I'm not exactly sure because my brain was kind of fried at that point.
I think Keone is saying that group hug might have come from Neil.
That sounds about right. Actually, no. I think it might have been Fashion. I think Fashion might have came up with that one. But anyway, so like we came up with 3-day weekend, and originally we had this really like goofy marketing play. It was Neil, Matt. Oh, well, Matt Mira's in the chat. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Matt. Congratulations on the launch, buddy.
So wow, okay, I totally forgot it was Neil. That's great. So anyway. So we came up with 3-day weekend, and then we're like, well, what about our socials? Because 3-day weekend is obviously taken everywhere. So then we're trying to come up with like hyphens and dots and all this stuff, and we were kind of going for like a goofy brand to like be really fun and not serious, and we were gonna go a certain way with it. And then so we came up with this. Our social handle of Yay 3-day weekend. And when I know that was Neil. So when Neil said that, like I was like, this is perfect. Like this is exactly the feel we're going for. And then we kind of pivoted on the brand and got a little more serious because look, not every single person on the roster is a goofball. Everyone has different personalities, sure. And the agency is supposed to be, welcoming to all of them. So came up with 3-day weekend. I mean, this is all in the last, few weeks, and Fashion made some incredible videos, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And we just officially launched the brand yesterday. Matt, if you want to join us here, I don't know if you want to come say hello. And if you don't, that is perfectly fine. I think you might be at basketball with one of the kids. No, Nikki Chips, there is no concerns about getting one-upped by 4-day weekend. You know what that reminds me of? The movie Something About Mary. When he's talking about 7-minute abs, and she says, well, what if someone does 6-minute abs? And he's like, no, it's not, it's 7-minute abs. Yeah, unless you've seen the movie, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But
I mean, maybe the weekend, Abel should be worried about getting one-upped by you and your agency. Maybe he needs to worry about that
3 times.
Three times.
3 times better.
That's what I'm saying.
So we launched yesterday. It went great. Everybody put a lot of work into this. You'll see our website URL down at the bottom, scrolling. Check it out. So on top of all this crazy news, Matt Mira, who I don't know if everybody here knows, but a lot of you guys probably know him. I finally convinced Matt to join the team and come on board as a partner in the company. And he's going to handle a lot of the marketing stuff and the creative and help us out with merch because we are going to have merch. So Matt's joined on, which is so awesome. Like, it's great having someone to kind of bounce ideas off every day. And other than you, I mean, you've done a lot for this as well. Which is yeah. Yes, Jenna, we're going to have bucket hats. Actually, I want a bucket hat for sure. I totally lost my train of thought now.
It was an interesting lead up into the launch. I mean, it was, for me, even on the periphery, to kind of see how you guys are spooling this thing up. And in the last hours and minutes, we were collectively bouncing off some copy, just going back and forth, and it was equal parts stress and it's like riding a roller coaster for all the right reasons. Like, it's a thrill, it's a ride, and it's fun, and it's happening in real time, and there's deadlines that are happening. And when that last little piece came out, that was, it was just fun. And I think that there's a lot of good things that are about to happen with this. Me personally, as a friend, I can be known to be harshly critical of things of this nature. But I like this a lot. I don't know what it is. If it's that schoolhouse, if it's from the Schoolhouse Rock type font on the actual logo that trickles down to just the vibe to the actual talent on the roster. I mean, when I look at, the artists, and forgive me, I'm just going to run through them really quick. Bella Fiasco, and this is all in alphabetical order, and Bella Fiasco, Chachi, Chris Masterson, De La Chapelle, E-Rock, Fashion, Neil Jackson, DJ Quiz, Romeo Reyes, which you mentioned earlier, Spider, and Tina T. It's like, yeah. This is, as Glenda just said, she loves the name and the vibe about it. And I think the vibe is really on point. Like, this is the right team for this right moment right now, because I think the world that we came into pandemic is completely different than the world that we're coming out of it. And I'll explain why. I've been watching a lot of our friends in our social circles are DJs, and a lot of them are working now, which is fun to watch. Whether they're DJs or operators, managers, cocktail servers, up and down the operational hierarchy. And music is in this incredible place where it was a decade ago. You're hearing all of these big room anthems that were prevalent a decade ago. Like, Chris Brown's Beautiful People is being played everywhere. And that song is 11 years old. People want to go out and party and rage and have a good time. And it like, I'm seeing these nightclubs and it's sounding like Intervention Sundays a decade ago. It's sounding
Right.
like, and I'm using venues, it's Vegas sounding like Vegas a decade ago. So, I think that this is the right roster and the right vibe for right now. So congratulations on, to you, to Matt, and to everybody on your team. This should be a fun ride.
Thank you. And I do want to thank you, because literally 10 minutes before we sent out the email blast to everybody, our friend Zilla here was helping us write the copy for the email blast. And, I'll tell you this. I think our website came out amazing. Okay. But when you're trying to build a website in 10 days from scratch, and your web developer and designer is in Amsterdam,
yeah,
and you're in California, I don't think I slept well for 10 days. I was up at 4 to 5 a.m. on the phone with Lev, or I'd be up at 11 o'clock at night when he was waking up. It was pretty wild. It was pretty wild. And and a huge, immense shout out to our friend James Vickery in the chat, he is our social media dude. That is his official title. I just came up with it. He has done all the social media for this launch. So anything you've seen, he did it. And I think it's been incredible. I did our social media at White Label for 7 years. He's done more in 2 weeks than I did in 7 years.
James, you want to
really incredible.
Use social media for my sandwich shop? I pay in bacon and turkey. Keone was asking, on a statement I made earlier, what did he say by transitioning back a decade? Would you say that EDM is losing steam? I would actually argue the contrary, that these big room EDM records are more prevalent. I would say that, it is back to that open format leaning more dance and dance, and electronic, then you're not going to hear 40-minute sets of trap.
This is not the time in our lives where you're going to hear 70 BPM mumble rap.
No, exactly.
I mean, obviously there's a place for everything. We know that, but for the most part, all my guys are out there playing. They're telling me that it's high energy EDM. I just got off the phone with someone before we started this, that owns nightclubs, restaurants, a very large number of them. And he told me the same thing. It feels like 2010, 11, with high energy, kind of big room. People just want to let loose. It's hard to let loose listening to Future.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation, and I'm not trying to name drop, but one of our mutual friends that and he had just come off of 3 dates, larger venues, both Vegas and the East Coast, and the consensus is, jump in at 120, jump in at 128 BPM and just leave it there for a while, because everybody just wants to rage. Like,
yep.
Everyone's been cooped up for a year and a half to different, to various degrees. And, if music is the soundtrack of our lives, when people are in nightclubs, they want to party. They want the music that makes them feel like they are at a party. And like you said, 70 beats per minute mumble rap is just not, there's a place for it, during sets. And I'm not going to tell people how to do their jobs. They do it. I don't. But from what I'm hearing from friends, and now, let's see. I thought I saw something that Darth Vader said here, it's hip hop and Latin driven. And I think that that's, reasonable, in between, different geographies are just going to have different demands. And I think that, different cities will always sound, not everything's always going to be the same. Yeah, correct. You're not in the Vegas market. Let's see. Showtime is saying Twitch DJs were forced to dig deep in their crates over the last year, and then fell in love with big room EDM again. Yeah, I'm loving, I'm just loving, like, when I'm scrolling through, my social media feeds and just seeing everyone wilding out, standing on tables, throwing napkins in the air, sparklers every direction. Like, that's where my heart is at in all of this. So maybe I'm a little biased. I love that sound. I love that feel when a room is just on fire, firing on all cylinders. That's just where I'm at with it. And for everybody that had to suffer over the last year with no paychecks, no gigs, no revenue, no nothing, to see not only this, I mean, for a long time, people were saying nightlife is dead. What we know as nightlife is over. And they were kind of right to an extent, because it's back and then some. You saw a year and a half ago, people are saying New York is dead. Everyone's fleeing New York. I'm watching $1 Million Listing New York, which was filmed at the height of the pandemic. And you're just seeing all of this doom and gloom, while I wake up in the morning now and I'm seeing New York real estate values are at the highest they've ever been. So not only did things, things snap back, but they snapped back and then some. So, and yes, Lisa asks, yacht rock and EDM, music is everything. I will co-sign on that statement. There is nothing better.
So my thought, well, first of all, before I get into that, our good friend Matt Mira just sent me basically a lookbook of what our first merch run is going to look like. And it's so sick. I'm so excited right now.
Just remember that
I am not showing any of you, because that is not going to happen. Only because of one thing. Obviously, look, what the logo looks like. I'm sure you can imagine what it looks like on a t-shirt, right? But there is a shirt that is so perfect. You're not allowed to say it until it comes out. But to touch on that point, and Daniel G, if you're still in the chat, don't go anywhere, because I want to talk to you. And I'll explain that story in a minute. But I, obviously running rehab and then running intervention, the whole big room EDM movement, was massive back then, whether it was, Swedish House Mafia, David Guetta, those type of artists. And it had its moment. It was great. After being in it every day, listening to it every day, having to listen to it every day, I hated it. So by 2014, 15, couldn't stand it. Did not want to hear any music, put your hands up. Like, no, I'm not putting my hands up. All I wanted to hear was some at that point I was more into like the grimier, dirtier stuff, some trap, some deeper stuff. And that's what I liked. And now, like, I've heard some Twitch sets in the past year, and they've been that bigger room house or EDM or whatever you want to call it. And I've started to remember how good that music feels. Matt, you don't have to, dude. Don't stress, bro. So yeah. So Daniel G. Dave, first of all, how old are you, Daniel? That's something I didn't ask you, but I want to tell a little backstory here. So Tina T, who is a artist on 3-Day Weekend, which is weird to say, she runs a camp called Camp Spinoff. Now this camp is pretty incredible. I've been to it, and it's a camp for kids, and it's basically a camp on how to become a DJ, how to become a producer. And there's incredible DJs that go there, and they're counselors. I'm trying to remember some of the people that were actually there. I believe Seraphin was there. I think Earwax was there.
I think Vice went once, right?
Well, no, but I'm saying like the regulars that are actually counselors.
Yeah.
Sir Marcus, I believe, was one of the guys that were there. But anyway, so then every year they would have like guest DJs show up. Vice, would go every year. I think A-Track might have come last year. Somebody wants to say hello.
Hi.
Well, there he is. Say hello. There's Uncle Zilla. And everybody in the chat, I'm sure, would love to say hello to you. So yeah. So, Vice would show up, and the Captains of Industry, which is Stone Rock and Graham Funky, would show up. And I went one year. And we were driving from like San Francisco for my brother's wedding down to San Diego to spend a few days there. So we stopped, and it takes place in Ojai. And this camp is incredible. Like, Tina brought me down or wanted me to talk to any of the kids about kind of the business side of being a DJ. So that's what I did. And kids would come up to me and ask questions, and they were really, really good questions. They weren't just like, so how do I make money? It wasn't like basic stuff. It was really important stuff.
Which is a good question, but
I mean, that's obviously the most important question, but that's not where it went. But anyway, so recently Tina T linked me on an email with Daniel G, and he had some questions, and it was about agencies and what we're looking for when we sign new artists, and kind of just maybe a little bit of career advice. So I tested him in the beginning, and I forget what I did, but I was cognizant of how long it took him to get back to me when I replied to him, and then I think I skipped a day of replying to him to see if he would reach out again, because that's something that you have to do as an agent, as someone looking for work, or a DJ. You have to be aggressive, and right. I try to do it with a light touch. But if you send someone a message, whether it's an email, a text, a phone call, and they don't get back to you, that doesn't mean the conversation's over. You have to do it again.
Agreed.
And you might have to do it again, but you also have to know when not to do it again, which is something that it's hard to teach. You just have to get a feel for it. But, and then someone in the chat this morning, I forget who it was, in Neil's stream, he was asking, how do you start a DJ agency? And I told him, tune in at 6 p.m., which is what we're doing right now. And then he also asked, like, how does someone join an agency? And I said, tune in at 6 p.m. So we don't typically get into like the weeds on the music industry, because even though it's called The Old Guy in the Club, this isn't really a nightclub podcast. It's a podcast with nightclub people, and we normally talk about other things.
Right.
But, I felt like tonight would be a good time to talk about this. And obviously I'm not going to get into like too deep in the weeds. But, the first thing of starting a DJ agency, I did it 7 years ago and I just basically did it all over again. This time was harder, which is crazy. This was harder than when I did it without having any experience as an agent. I just knew the other side of the business. But you have to create a real business. You have to have bank accounts. You have to have a little bit of money to start. You have to have a brand. You have to have social media is incredibly important. You have to have great relationships with DJs, and you have to have great relationships and no buyers. If you don't have those things, could you learn it? Yeah, it's not brain surgery, right? But it helps because I was in the nightclub business for 20 years when I started this thing. I had a lot of contacts, and I would talk to people before we opened, and I would say, "Hey, when I open up, I'm going to represent these DJs. You're going to book my guys? Absolutely." And then what happens when you call and you say, "Hey, I'm open. Let's get some dates on the books," and these people that you were friends with don't call you back? Then what happens? And it's very disheartening, and it takes someone with a certain personality to do it, because if you have an ego about it, it's not going to last. You're not going to get the end result.
Or thin skin about it, right? Like if you take
can't be thin skin. And I never thought I was a salesman. I don't really still consider myself a salesman. But when you get told no over and over and over, or not even told no, just ignored by people that you've done millions of favors for in your life, that's a tough one to take.
It certainly is.
Now,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go. I need some water.
I was going to throw a question out there because Keone was asking, buyer, is that the club or venue promoter? And I would say that it in a lot of times they're one and the same, right? Like,
well, yeah, sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're totally different. It just depends on how the club operates. I for example, there's a club I work with in Riverside called Aurea Vista, and it's a couple. They own the club, a guy and his wife, like the sweetest, nicest people ever. And Warren is the buyer. He'll book the dates, and then he passes everything along to Monette, his wife, and she does the logistics, the flyers, the advancing, and all that stuff. So, in that situation, hold on one sec. I got a call coming in, and I have to write this back because it is an important call.
Yeah, it is.
So anyway, so yeah, in that case, the club, the venue is the buyer. But a lot of times, the clubs rely on the promoters that they have to be the buyers. And then in other times, the clubs hire an outside third-party buyer, which I've done that job a million times in my life. Kalika, who owns Blackout Artists, she does the same thing. And everybody has kind of done that at one point. So I hope that answered the question.
Daniel, it's Daniel. Sorry. One of the things that he was asking about how does one start an agency? It all starts with your reputation. And that's a big part of it because, at the end of the day, working DJs are artists and they're counting on you as their agent to represent them in their best interests. They have their own personal brands. The agency has its own brand, and all of them are interwoven and projections of one another. So, I think there's something to be said for personality, being something to be said for ethics. These are all things that go into, there isn't a checklist necessarily for starting an agency, but these are attributes that are definitely required if one wants to be successful in that.
Yeah, and our good friend Della Chappelle is in the chat. He is part of the 3-day weekend roster, and also he is a talent buyer. And if he would like to jump on this chat with us and throw any knowledge out there to our people, he already has the link because I sent it to everybody and said if they wanted to stop by, jump in. but he also has a young child, which, you know, I was going to say a baby, but I guess not a baby anymore. I'm thinking, like, you forget about the year 2020. It doesn't exist.
Right.
So everything's a year older or a year further removed. It's so crazy. But yeah, 1 year old. See, that's so nuts.
Hey, Justin.
Yes.
You know, one of the other things that Daniel wanted to know. So we did a good job of covering like the whole how to start an agency, but from the DJ's perspective about how to get on a roster. I think that's something worth talking about.
This is probably more important to talk about because, you know, there's a hell of a lot more DJs than agencies. There's not a lot of agencies, right? So if you're a DJ and you want to do this professionally, first of all, you don't need to be on an agency. You don't need an agent. You know, when you're first starting out, I would suggest not having an agent, because if you don't do the job yourself, well, we do have a special guest that we're about to bring in. Well, there he is.
There he is,
Mr. Clayton De La Chapelle.
Yeah, I didn't see the text. I was like, oh, you did send an invite. What's up, Rob?
What up, buddy?
I did. Hey, man, thanks for popping in. So to everyone here in the chat, this is De La Chapelle, DJ extraordinaire. I mean, that's see, I'm a terrible salesman. I told you, I'm not even selling them right now. But he's been on my roster for, God, probably 5 years now, something like that. And before that, when we had a club in San Diego, he would play for us down there. And, you know, we've just been friends for many years. And he also buys talent. I was about to say on the side, but you probably DJ on the side more than buy talent at this point.
Yeah, so, I mean, it obviously switched pretty hard. You know, like buying talent for one venue versus like 25, your time gets a little tricky. Yeah.
So explain to Daniel and Keone in the chat and anybody else that's interested. I mean, this is interesting stuff. Like, you know, it's just old hat for us because we know it. But to like other people out there, they probably don't understand like what goes into a booking. Like how does someone, let's say in the chat, that doesn't know anything about the music industry, but they go out and they, you know, let's say they go to a club every Friday or every Saturday or twice a month, they go to a nightclub, whatever that club is, a different club every time. Like what goes into like to putting that together? So when they walk in, there's like a DJ and there's fun happening. Like, how does that happen?
Money, lots of money.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it depends because you can have like your clubs that are like these mega clubs or the ones that are super high stress. Like, you know, I'll use something like Infusion Lounge or Park or something where there's a lot of like, it's strictly just a club, right? And they're booking anything from $2,000 DJs to $25,000 celebrities and throwing big events weekly. You know, that's a shit show to put together. That you're looking at liquor sponsorship dollars, relationships with talent buyers, relationships with, you know, the artists, you know, athletes, all that other fun stuff. And then, you know, whatever, even like the influencer game when that was happening. So if you're the buyer, you kind of have to have like your tentacles out in all those industries. But, you know, scaling it back to something more approachable, like if you've never done this before, you trying to go get a gig at, you know, the hottest club in town is probably the worst place to start. Because it just, even on the off chance that the buyer's stupid enough to put you on, you're going to probably have the worst night of your life, and it's going to show really fast. I mean, I've been put in places
where did you start when you first started? What kind of places?
So I started at like local bars around Wrigleyville here in Chicago. You know, obviously before I was 21, doing like weddings and bar mitzvahs and private events, doing like the mobile DJ scene. And then as soon as I turned 21, got my fake ID, I started basically just, this is before like talent buyers, you would scan Craigslist or walk into bars and kind of just see what they were doing. And so I started at these small little bars and lounges, just starting my own off nights and kind of learning how to do a bar versus a private event. And then obviously like from that opportunity, you know, bred other opportunity, whatever that may be. And then kind of like moving up. I think my first big club gig in Chicago was Enclave and then Reserve. So like I won like some DJ battle at Enclave up against like 5 or 6 local guys, and I think 2 or 3 of those local guys became pretty prevalent DJs. So like again, it's just putting yourself out there in those spots, and that's how I started. But again, like going back to approachable shit, just go to a local bar that has a DJ or even doesn't, and befriend the bartender, the manager, the owner, and create those relationships and see if you can start a night, an off night, even if it's for bullshit cash, because at the very bare minimum, it's a testing ground for your abilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. You know, it's not, obviously you have to be able to DJ. You need to be able to do the actual job, right? You need to be able to mix 2 songs together, play the right music. But the one of the biggest parts of growing as a DJ, of getting booked, is hanging around, being there every night, meeting the bartender, meeting the manager, meeting the owner, and learning how to interact with people. Because if you just come into a situation with the owner or the manager or the booker, whoever it might be, and you just start trying to sell yourself right away, it is not gonna work. Never in a million years. It's almost like if you go somewhere, like let's say you decide there's a bar or a club near where you live, and you think that, you know, this is probably my speed when I get started. Go there every single night.
Yeah.
Every night, and don't tell anybody what you do. Just go there, meet people. If someone asks, tell them, but don't push it down anyone's throat. And a month later, you know, that manager, that owner, that booker might say, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a DJ. Oh shit, no way. You know, and maybe you're having a couple drinks or whatever. And he's like, yeah, we should try you out sometime. That's your chance. Like, but you can't force anything to happen. And if you do, it typically goes bad.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you force yourself into a venue you're not ready for, or a party you're not ready for, it's gonna go bad. You're never gonna get invited back, and people are gonna see it. And a lot of times, not always, a lot of times, people that are there, they know it. And if there's people
about it,
what's that?
And they're going to talk about it. Like
people love to hate.
I mean, that's the sad reality of it, right? Like if you go on, if you have a great night, no one's really going to talk about it. You might get a little bit of love, but if you go on and bomb in front of everybody, by 3 a.m., the entire community knows.
But I feel like both those
DJs
are equally as dangerous, because it's like the kids that do bad and they hear about it, they're gutted. But then from like the buyer standpoint, the kids that do well and hear about it, where it's like the manager, like I get it all the time, where it's like, you know, the manager said I did a great job, so let's get the next 4 dates on the book and I need a raise. And I'm like, yeah, we're not working together anymore. You know what I mean? So like I feel like those situations are terrible. It's just like, do your fucking job, like do a shot with the owner and get the fuck out. Like, and just know that the gig is going to be there, but like, don't, you know, jerk yourself off either way.
And it's funny because like a lot of times, you know, there's very few level-headed DJs. When it comes to like how they think they performed, there's guys that think they were the greatest DJ in the history of the world, and they're wrong. And there's guys that think that they totally bombed, shit the bed, worst DJ set of all time. They're wrong too. It's normally somewhere in the middle. And it's funny, when I first started working with Neil, probably around 6 years ago, he played a gig and I called him the next day and I'm like, how did it go? And he's like, fuck, it was so bad. Like, I didn't know what to play. I played all the wrong songs. Like, everything I did was wrong. And I get a phone call, and it's the owner of the club from the night before. And I'm like, Neil, hold on 1 second. And it just so happened the guy was like one of my best friends in the world. So I'm like, hey, how did Neil do last night? Amazing. I want him every Friday.
And that's super rare though, right?
I mean, you know, it is and it isn't. Like, people just, so of course I get back on the phone and I'm like, Neil, you're an idiot. Like, I know you think you suck, but they just want you to do every Friday. But
I feel like
you know,
DJs need like that, like extra stroke. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. You kind of need that like comforting, like you did a great job, you killed it, you're the next Diplo, like keep pushing on, because I don't, it's like, it's kind of like a thankless career. So it's like for a lot of these guys, if they don't have that they sort of crumble. I mean, you joked even on our call the other day, I'm here to be your therapist.
Well, I don't know if anybody's read my bio on the website. I think see, now I got to pull it up because I don't remember the exact words. It's just basically saying what I do for the company. And it was
you've owned it for 6 years.
Justin Zotz's 3-day weekends, business brain, and shoulder to cry on. So, which, I mean, it's funny. Like, you know, I was talking to someone today, and I'm like, thank God this launch is over because I don't want to ever talk about marketing again. I just want to book DJs and be an adult babysitter. That's all I want to do for my job now because that's all I'm good at.
Yeah. I'm reading through these like questions here. Like some kid just asked how you get booked out of town if you're killing it locally. I mean, that's hard.
Yeah. Can you? I don't know if you were here when we started talking about this, but Daniel went to Tina's camp when he was a kid.
Oh shit!
And
cool.
So she linked me up with him earlier, a couple weeks ago now, and I've just been so busy I haven't had a chance to talk to him, and I totally forgot. And I thought I had gotten back to him, but I didn't. And I just texted him before we came on, and I said, "Hey, let's talk tomorrow. If you want to jump on, we're going to talk about this stuff on the show too." So he jumped in. But like, that's even a question that, as a guy that started as a young DJ, you're probably way more qualified to answer this than I am, just because everyone that I'm booking, like, has been through this. So I haven't really had to do that part of it. But what would your advice be?
I mean, when I was trying to break into markets I didn't live in and I wanted to play there, like I would just vacation there, go there and kind of do the same thing, like network with DJs there and be like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Is there any way to like hop on a set or something like that and kind of just grow out? I mean, we even get like guys now that want to come to Chicago and it's like, hey, we're going to come in for a weekend. Can I like pick up some gigs? And if we can do it, we do it, as long as they're like good DJs. So like, it never hurts to ask. I just think the expectation is like, you're not gonna, if you've never traveled before, you're not like a draw DJ or whatever. You don't have like the papers to go with it. Like, don't expect to get paid like $2,000, $3,000 per gig, like limo rides and other shit. Yeah. Rob's like, I quit. Because I think that's what holds up a lot of kids. I mean, there's markets I've played in where like I've gotten through like, you know, half a set and I was like, I fucking hate this market. Like, I don't know why I thought this was going to be fun or a good idea. I don't ever want to go back here.
Right.
And, you know, some of these kids could fight like that to get into a market and realize the same thing. Like, oh, this sucks, man. Like, and so you don't ever want to do that at a high stake gig with a lot of money. Cause like any market's going to be okay if the money's really good, you know, like in the DJ's mind. So, you know, maybe go test the waters.
I don't know. I've had some DJs tell me, I don't care what they pay me. I'm never going back there ever again.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely those markets too, but I don't think I think some of those markets are like, they're not the ones people want to play. I think you get some of the up and comers,
right.
Like San Francisco, Chicago, Miami.
Yeah, it's not Vegas.
Yeah, I think whatever. Like, you know, they're talking about like Dubuque, Iowa, or something. When like, they're like, I'm never going back there even for like $2,000.
If I could jump in on this really quick, you know, Daniel, sure. The best advice that I could give you is do your job and do it better than do it better than everybody else. Don't be the guy that's falling down. You know, there's a time and a place for everything, but so help me God, when you're in a room and there are other DJs in the room, they're watching and they're listening. And the greatest thing that you could have is the cosign. That is the one thing when another DJ that is respected puts the stamp of approval on you. The way that you start working is when that guy goes to another city and says, and they're saying, you know, hey, we don't have an opener this week. You know anybody? And they say, I know a guy. That's how it starts. But by doing your job, by showing up on time, by not burning the headliner, like, you know, there's certain aspects to this, and I hate the term playing the game, but it's really paying your dues. Yeah. And I see that you've been working, you know, mobile since 13, working in, you know, clubs at 18, and you're 22 now. There's a long career ahead of you. And I know that you feel like you've been doing this for a really long time. You're just getting started. And I think we're all excited to see where your career trajectory takes you. But believe you me, it's all about the networking. It's all about doing the work. Because
Mr.
Go ahead, Justin.
Sorry, Zilla. I jumped in. I'm sorry.
Good.
So Mr. Swin said networking with other DJs is the power move. 100% correct, right? So, but add on top of that, I'll touch on something Zilla said. Do not burn the headliner. You are not there to be the headliner. You are there to be the opener, and it is very hard to be a good opener. I mean, I would argue, and I'm not a DJ. I would argue it's harder to be a good opener than a good headliner.
You know, it's like there was a mantra I tried to live by like the last few years before COVID, where it's like I kind of, when I would go like to places where I was headlining and there were openers like, yeah, man, like what should I play? And I was like, burn me. I was like, there's fucking 10,000 songs in my laptop. I don't need the 40 you're gonna burn me with to like rock this party. So it was kind of like a couple guys actually did it, and it was hysterical to like be like, cool, play this whole set, and realize like you didn't need whatever the newest Diplo shit was, because, you know, some fucking Nelly record from 2006 went 10 times harder, you know, at 1:30 in the morning. So, I mean, again, like read the room, play with who you are, because like even now, like looking at the current music state, like I wouldn't know what would burn me, because I don't like, again,
right.
We haven't been in a club for a year, but like, I don't know like what the big reaction songs are. So like, if I go DJ tomorrow, I'm just kind of like shooting in the dark.
But I think, you know, it's a respect thing too, right? Like, you know, those that have come before have paved the ways for those who are coming up. And it's just, it's an ongoing cycle in this business. And sure, if you are a DJ that's worth your salt to be, you know, if you're headlining, there is nothing that an opener can play that can theoretically burn you. Like, you know, but with that said, it's still a respect thing that like, what would you like me to play? What do you not want me to play? And as the headliner, you give them license, then that's on you. But it should also be on them to, you know, that's the hat tip. That's the nod that I respect you. And, you know, I always equate, opening DJs to the guy who holds the ball during a field goal attempt playing football.
Yeah.
You're the guy that takes the snap. You're holding it upright so that the headliner can kick that thing through the goalposts.
And if you're burning the headliner, you're pulling the ball away at the last second. You pull a loosie and everybody loses. But, you know, if you play your position on the team and recognize that that's your position in that moment in your career right here, right now, the whole team wins and everybody recognizes that. Yeah. And I mean, listen, like, I think for any of these guys looking on how to like make it or travel or whatever, like there's rules, but there's no rules, you know? So like if you can bring 600 people to the club that are going to spend a ton of money on a Friday night, and that's how you get your headline gigs, like cool. Like, but that well is going to dry up. So like, be ready for the next thing. Or the guys that are like doing date trades, like cool. But the minute you don't have dates to trade, your well is dried up and you got to figure something else out. So like, no matter what, it comes back to talent, your personality, and like your networking. Anything else on top of that is just, you found a quick loophole and it's eventually going to stop. It's kind of like all those DJs that were producing like the garbage ass, like LMFAO EDM ripoff stuff for like those 2-3 years when it was hot. And then that dried up. And now they're like,
sorry.
But now like they don't, there's nothing, like they're not getting booked on that. So it's like, if you're a producer and you're trying to get booked off your music and you're just chasing those trends, I think it's even harder. And like, you know, guys like Diplo who are kind of chameleons in that industry, or guys like Calvin Harris who can really like just bank off their catalogs. That's like literally like not even a 1%. It's like a 0.001%.
It's a 1% of what? It's a 1% of 1% of 1%.
Yeah, I have friends that have great tracks and they're on Spotify and, you know, millions of plays, and they're still just doing like the regular open format circuit, and the goal is to headline UBC. And it's like, so what's the track that takes you there? Like that weird one that you probably aren't going to release for the next 10 years.
Yeah, so and again, I'll reiterate this, and it's Clayton. It's a little different for you because you have so many people playing so many gigs. You know, in a given night. Like when I owned clubs and ran clubs, you know, we just had 1 or 2, 3 DJs a night, you know, depending on what it was. And look, if I was booking an open format night at 207, right, back in the day, you know,
me too.
It was a fun place. So, but the thing is, like, you know, before the night, I'm going to take the DJ to Nobu. We're going to get to Nobu at 9:30. We're going to sit there. We're going to have a meal. We're going to eat great food. We're going to have a couple drinks, and we're going to talk for 2 hours before you go on at 11:30, right? Now, if you're a guy who can have a conversation and have fun and be interesting, you are going to get booked again. If you are a guy that's going to sit there on his phone all night long and not really engage, I'm not going to book you. You know why? Because there's 50 other people just like you.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's such a dick thing to do to the talent buyer is to sit on your phone when they take you out to dinner.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there's between me and Scam and Blackout and Sleeping Giant and DGI and all these places. So let's say there's a certain level of talent that you need to headline a 700-person nightclub in a major city, okay? There's probably 40 to 50 people, would be my guess, that are acceptable choices for this.
Yeah.
Right? So if I book Della Chappelle to play my club and he shows up and he's wearing sunglasses at dinner and he's on his phone and he doesn't want to talk to me and it's like pulling teeth to get him to have a conversation, he could be the greatest DJ we've ever had. But guess what? I'm going to book Spider because he can do a great job too. And we're going to have a fun conversation. We're going to laugh. We're going to enjoy each other's company. Or I'm going to book E-Rock. Or I'm going to, you know, there's a million other guys I can go get. Jersey, any one of 50 guys I can name right now. So that is a big
fun. Like that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, look, qualification number one, you have to be able to rock the room. That's number one. But after that, who do you want to be around?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it is a job, right? And you know, and when artists, there are artists who actually do treat it like their job, and they go out and they go to those dinners and they shake every hand, and you know, it's like running for office sometimes. It's like if you're at a certain level and you're asking the buyer to either choose me or he has 39 other choices, you said it yourself. Who is he choosing? He's going to remember the guy that came to town, was respectful, went to dinner, rocked the room, had a great time, sent the thank you note, had a great time, thanks for having me out, or placed the call and said, you know, I really had a great time, thank you so much. Like, buyers will remember that. And
the next day phone call is key.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
you know how I left my laptop in the club. Can you grab it for me?
And this job comes with, God bless you guys, this job comes with a lot of perks. But with that come a lot of responsibilities. Treat people well, do your job better than anybody else, have fun.
And here's another one. Be respectful to the staff at the nightclub.
100%.
From the bathroom attendant to the security guy at the door to the security guy at the stage to the busboy who's picking up the drinks that you spilled all over yourself.
Absolutely.
That is huge.
Like, take somebody out.
House.
What's that?
It's like carry like a $20 bill, like tip somebody out. Because I know a lot of DJs that don't do that. Like the drink tabs you get, the bottle service you get, like they're working for that and you're not paying. So it's like the least you can do is tip them. Because like we get that all the time from our clients where it's like DJ ran up a $200 tab and didn't even tip anybody. It's like, okay, like fuck that guy.
Yeah. So Mr. Swins just said, whenever DJ Shift leaves a gig, he literally shakes every single employee's hand on the way out, just like a politician. And you know what? And Shift has been working steadily for 13, 14 years at this point. You know, every nightclub in Vegas, every pool in Vegas, and all over the country.
But you know what's crazy?
I mean, and he's a terrible DJ. So it's got to be work. No, I'm just kidding. Like you have to play and you do that stuff, you'll get invited back. It's that simple.
And you never know what the information those guys are going to hold. I mean, the pandemic, when like half of our clients, if not all of them, like basically were shutting down, going out of business, like the last 6 months when things started to kind of sneak back, there was at least 3 barbacks or 2 bartenders where we leaned on them for information because we knew the management was gone. And so we were trying to figure out like what was going on. And those guys came in like clutch. They're like, oh yeah, like this is who got hired. Here's his number, blah, blah, blah. So like knowing the bartenders, the barbacks, the servers, whatever is huge because they're an easy way for information into the venue. Who's talent buying now? Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So here's another one. This is probably another Della Chappelle question because I'm not a DJ. How do you navigate requests from the owner, promoter, bottle service folks, drunk girls, etc.?
With the most polite way you can, because it doesn't fucking matter. Like, whether you play it or not, like if it's something you're going to play, just be nice about it. And like, don't be a dick. Like at the end of the day, you're playing somebody else's music anyway, and they're not there to see you specifically most of the time, especially if you're starting out. So unless they're out asking for some super off-cut shit, like if they're asking for country in a hip hop bar, and even at that point, that's when you kind of just, you know, at least be polite about it, because you never know who you're going to piss off. And like that's what.
And what about when you have an owner that, you know, thinks he knows more than the DJ? Which, you know, look, he knows his room, but it's one of those things where, like, as an owner, as a buyer, like, I never, unless there was a specific reason I needed something, whether it was a big client or something like that, I would let people do their thing, you know, because if you're not playing what you should be playing, it's my fault as the buyer that I put the wrong DJ in the room.
Yeah, and from like the owner, it's like, okay, is the guy requesting something for like a spender, or is he requesting something just because he's the owner? And it's like, how much do you care about this gig to play it, swallow your pride, and let some weird shit happen just so the owner's happy? And whether he's the buyer or not, he's still gonna like be happy with you and tell the buyer to bring that guy back. I mean, I've seen DJs literally do like fucking line dance shit because the owner wanted it, or some weird karaoke thing, or like there's been so many weird owner requests where it's like, if you can't navigate that professionally and you're going to make a big deal about it, expect to lose that gig because you don't know.
When I was tour managing, I, you know, prided myself on advancing shows. So, you know, I would reach out to venue management, you know, what are you guys looking for tonight? You know, that I can communicate to, you know, the people that I'm working with, you know, how do you guys handle this? How do you want us to handle this? And I get that information up front, you know, and then I'll usually like there's, you know, they know kind of sort of like who their reservations are for tables, and so-and-so's coming in, they like this. And then I'll get a singular point person. Like, so if they have any requests, it's not a waitress and then a, you know, a busser and then, you know, a junior host, and then the owner. Usually it's like one person, which is like, you know, the guy or girl that's heading up VIP services, and that's the person that's funneling through requests, and we handle it that way, and it worked, and it, you know, but everybody's got their own system. But advancing shows also shows the venue that you care.
Yeah,
that you're not going to just show up and do whatever, even if you're just going to show up and do whatever.
I think that's like the open format DJ, though. You just show up and kind of do whatever.
To an extent, right? But you know, I'm just a believer in advancing shows, and it just also it helps in getting down rider requirements, transportation, all the other things that are always in play. So I mean, and not everybody has the benefit of having somebody that tours with them to figure that out. But still, as an artist, when you're advancing your own agenda, I mean, when you're advancing your own shows, you are literally advancing your own agenda. You're putting yourself back on the radar as a professional, because the vast majority of people don't do that.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, like, are you going to get a request once and let it bother you? Or is like the owner going to come up 20 times and then piss you off? And like, you just have to make those calls like case by case basis, right? Because even if you advance everything, shit can still hit the fan because you can't advance for like drunk girls or guys. Or whatever. So it's just
I remember one girl coming up and, you know, just 65 times asking for Lord Royals. I said Lord's Royals. And it's like, that is just not a record that is conducive to any nightclub. Also, you know, it's conducive if you're contemplating suicide, perhaps, but it's it's not a happy song. It's just there, you know, there's just not a whole lot there, right?
Yeah.
And you know, you just smile. We'll do our best. You know, we'll do our best for you.
Yeah. I was just reminded, I don't know why I just remembered this story when you guys were talking, but I remember about 5 years ago, Chris Masterson had a gig in Austria, in Vienna. And I made the deal, and I put in the deal that, you know, they had to buy me a plane ticket and a hotel room also. So we go out there, and we had one gig, right? So we literally, I mean, they were so far behind on payment. Like, they didn't pay us till the day we were leaving, and there was no way we were getting on a flight without being paid, right? So they pay us that day, like a Western Union. We get out there, and speaking of it, this is why, advancing the shows, right? We advance the show, everything is locked in. They pick us up at the airport, and they're like, okay, we just have to make one stop. And we're like, wait, what? Like, yeah, we just have to stop. It's like this thing we promised we would show up to, but we'll just be there a minute. We get there, and they had basically set up like a meet and greet with Chris without telling us, and they kept calling him Francis, which was his name on Malcolm in the Middle.
Wow!
Like, they did not recognize him as like Chris Masterson, DJ. It was Francis. They kept calling him Francis, and these guys, they were like young kids. And they were hilarious, but like they were so unprofessional. And we show up to this thing, we're like at a park, and there's like kids around. And everyone's like, Francis, and like they're trying to take pictures with him. And I'm like, are you guys fucking kidding me right now? So speaking of advancing the show, we get back to the hotel. Next. Oh, my son's yelling at me from the other room. I love Malcolm in the Middle. So then the next thing is, they're like, we're going to take you to dinner tomorrow night. We're like, okay. So me and Chris hang out for like the day. We, drink coffee and eat pastries, and it's a beautiful city, Vienna. So they pick us up for dinner the next day. We drive to like this freaking restaurant, like on the other side of town. We walk in, and like we sit down, and like there were bottles of vodka on the table. And when we sat down, they like put the bottles in front of Chris. And there was a guy like filming and taking pictures. And like, I'm like, what is happening right now? We can't have this. Like, you have to stop. And then it turns out the guy who was paying for everything was like this Armenian gangster. And him and Chris just like went off and were like just hanging out together, like talking. And Chris was like fascinated by this guy. So anyway, we do that. We go to the gig. The gig is packed. So now I'm stuck in the booth, right? And speaking of requests and all this stuff, the DJ booth is not very big. It's probably like, I don't know, 10 feet wide by like 6 feet, 7 feet deep. And there's like, it's shaped like a rectangle. But here at the back, there's like a door, which is how you get into like the booth. So I stand right in the middle of the door so no one can get in or out. The owner of the club kept coming up to me. Hey, I need to talk to Francis for a minute. All night. And like Chris, every time he would turn around, I would be like, my face must have like told the story of how miserable I was and wanting to kill everybody. He's like, look, bro, it's okay. He owns the club. He paid for this whole thing. He can come in and talk to me. I'm like, okay. So the guy would just come in every 2 minutes, talk to him. And then he would be like, hey, Francis said it's okay that he takes a picture with my sister. And Chris, I'm like, Chris. And he's like, yeah, it's okay. And like some girl would come in, he'd like, as he's DJing, would like, stop, take a picture with the guy's sister. And every 2 minutes, it was somebody else, his sister, his cousin, his girlfriend, his wife. It was none of them. It was just bringing people in. And finally, Chris was like, you need to have a beer and chill the fuck out and relax because there's nothing we can do at this point. Okay. So now we get through the gig. We're done. We fly back the next day or whatever. We had a great time. Like, it was fun. But speaking of advancing the show, like, now I know, like this can't happen again. 2 years later, 3 years later,
they call back.
They call me up. We want Francis again. So I'm like, what? I'm like, Chris, do you really want to do this? He's like, absolutely. It's going to be so much fun. I'm like, oh God. He's like, these guys are the best. I'm like, you're not going alone. I'm like, I'm not allowing you to go alone. And he's like, oh. And his friend Mike McGinnis, I don't know if you guys know Mike. So Mike used to own a talent agency with Chris way back in the day called Table Manners. So McGinnis just happened to be touring Europe that year, just hanging out. So he's like, look, McGinnis is going to show up. Just get me an extra room. He'll tour manage me for the show. I'm like, okay. So now I have to advance all this with McGinnis. And I'm like, dude, here's all the shit they're going to try. Like, you can't allow this to happen. And he's like, I can't wait for this. This is going to be so much fun. So Chris gets to Austria. Everything's fine. They're driving to the gig, and they say, we have to make a stop. And McGinnis is like texting me as this happens. I'm like, no fucking stops. I'm like, I know what's going to happen. And he's just laughing. He's like, Chris says it's okay. I'm like, I'm not there. You didn't want me there. I'm like, fine. They pull up to this clothing store, and there's paparazzi and crowds of people outside the store. It was like the grand opening of this vintage clothing store. They bring him out. There's like cameras in his face, wanting interviews. And then they're like, we closed off the store just for you, Francis. So come on and take whatever you want, and then you can get out of here. So we did. He played the gig. They got out of there the next day. Like me, I'm stressing like no other because I'm not there to help. But to this day, I mean, I sent Chris a text last week. I said, honest question, how often do you think about Terry from Austria? He's like, once a month. It's like once a month, I think.
Really?
Oh God! And I text McGinnis every year on his birthday, and I'm like, Terry, Austrian Terry says happy birthday. But yeah. So speaking, I don't know. I mean, I totally went off on a tangent as fucking usual. I mean, that really has nothing to do with our conversation.
But it's good though, because I mean, he's going to be the one that like has those kind of gigs, but I feel like every DJ that travels has like that shit show gig where you like are always 50-50 on it. You're like, but it's going to be fun, but it's going to be a shit show.
I mean, what and I think you touch on something where at the end of the day, it is still work, right? Getting up at the working till 2 a.m. and socializing and possibly, overdoing it. And then waking up the next morning at 6 a.m. to catch another flight to another city where you have to do it all over again before you get up at 6 a.m. to catch another flight to go to another city. Yeah, it's all great in the, on paper, but there's a lot of work that goes into this job. And, so for, I think it was Daniel that was asking earlier and everybody else. Yes, Mike Carbonell, we know you overdo it. That's that's why we love you.
Well, thank you to everyone that's saying it's a great story. I appreciate that. And speaking of advancing, and speaking of things to think about, E-Rock, our good friend, had a gig this past weekend in San Francisco on a yacht, like this party boat that they rented out, right? I've been out of practice. I haven't done this in a while, right? So I advanced the show. He's playing from 6 to 8. I don't know. Show up at 5:30. Like, just show up. Everything's good. He's like, dude, it's a boat. He's like, it's a boat. I probably have to be there at like 3 o'clock. I'm like, get out of here. I'm like, Luke, what time do you have to be there? He's like, well, the boat leaves at 4. So anytime before 4, I'm like, oh, fuck. And, luckily, E-Rock is a professional and figured this out before I did. I didn't even think twice about it. And then we were like, oh, fuck, what time does the boat dock? Because his set was over at 8. He had a 10:30 flight. So then he's like, he's the final guy. Like the boat docks at 8. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, it's a very important part of the job. I mean, if I didn't tell him and he didn't think about it, he would have showed up at 5 or 6, 5 or 5:30 for a 6 o'clock gig. No boat.
Details matter.
Details
matter.
Details always matter.
And one of the questions earlier, people were asking about. I'm going to try and find this question. I tried to pin it, but it didn't quite work. Hold on. I think Keone was asking about when a DJ gets booked, does flight hotel get factored in? Does the bigger celeb DJs get a bar guarantee? So there's a couple of things. There's the hospitality rider, which is subject to a buyout. We're going to get a little technical, but I'll keep this short and sweet. So as part of the contract, I'm going to pay this DJ X amount of dollars to perform in my venue for this amount of time. The hospitality rider or the contract might include transportation and lodging, or there might be an additional payout and say, okay, well, look, you book your own flights, you book your own hotel, here's $500 to do it, or whatever the number that gets negotiated to. That's the buyout. Also part of the hospitality rider, depending on your scale, you might get a bar tab. you might just get a couple drink tickets when you're starting out, which might turn into a reasonable bar tab to where you hit a certain point in your career where, all right, this is what I'm getting paid, but also, I've got a bottle of tequila, a bottle of vodka, or whatever your requirement while you perform, and the venue extends that hospitality to you while you're on property. So I think that answers the question, but I wanted to get that out of the way.
Yeah, it's all different.
Yeah,
it's all different. And it's not even the level of artist, right? Because there's plenty of artists out there that want their flights taken care of and everything, and then there's other ones that book everything on their own, like you said. I mean, there's some people that have crazy riders. There's some people that put shit in there just to make sure you're reading it. Yeah, it's true.
Green M&Ms.
Neil asks for one black sock on his rider, which I don't really understand, but no, I'm just kidding. He does not.
So, did I ever tell you my Candyland rider story? You remember those like EDM step guys?
Yeah.
They had the weirdest.
I never heard it though.
The weirdest rider, and it was like we had to go to Target to pick this up. We were doing an after show for them, and no joke, it was like Pop Rocks, Pokemon cards, like children's socks, or like underwear or something like that. Like there was weird shit, and I was like pretty green when I was doing this. I was like just getting it all, like AAA batteries, AA batteries, like non-alcoholic champagne. And so like as I'm checking out with all this crap, the woman at Target's like looking at me, and I'm kind of like, it looks like I'm trying to lure like a child. Like it literally looks like they've got a fucking white van parked out front. And sure shit, like when I met them like at the show, I was like, "Are you guys fucking with me with that rider?" And they're like, "Did you get it all?" And I was like, "I mean, it's in your room." They're like, "Holy shit, nobody's ever fulfilled that." I was so pissed. I was like, "That's like $400 in like child like entrapment things." Like, what the fuck, man? I'm surprised like I'm not being followed.
I can't remember which artist it was, but one writer. And by the way, to clarify, Keone, it's a writer, RIDER, not writer, as in one who writes. And that means that the contract rides on top of the existing contract. That's why it's called a rider. The one that I got was rope, Clorox, rubber gloves, and duct tape.
John Wayne Gacy up in here.
Well, that's the thing. Is like you're basically asking for tools to commit a murder, and to follow through. I went ahead and got it, and it was in the green room when they arrived. Why, I don't know, but it was there. And a lot of times it's in there, as you said, to make sure that people are actually reading it because that's the hospitality portion. But then there's also the technical portion, which is some DJs prefer to work on certain equipment, or if you're doing concerts, which that's kind of my background, certain aspects of sound. They want to make sure that what they're walking into they're getting off a plane or off a tour bus and into your venue. They're making sure that they're walking into something that's familiar to them. So by putting things that are absurd in the hospitality rider, if they can see at a glance that that's been addressed, they know that the technical rider is going to be safe as well on the surface. So that's why.
So yeah, I think we've answered a lot of questions.
Yeah,
I'm tired. We're not back in the swing of things yet. We took a month off. We got to get our sea legs back here.
No, but I actually like this kind of the format where we're actually talking about, the business a little bit and bouncing off some of these questions, bringing in an expert, to kind of offer yet another opinion, just independent of yours and mine. So I'm kind of digging I'm digging this show. Oh, so what are the repercussions if something on the rider isn't met? So help me. I've had artists that have refused to go on over insane things, but the one that comes to mind, and it isn't really a rider requirement, but good security backstage is always to your benefit as an artist. I mean, as a promoter or an operator. 20 some years ago, we had Macy Gray do a show, and she was being sued by a manager who she had fired, and there was a process server that somehow made their way backstage. So Macy was hiding in a van under a blanket and refused to go on stage because she was doing everything she could to avoid being served, because if she's not served, she can't go to court. This is 100% a true story. So, there are always, everyone's got a million stories like that little blurb right there. Backstage shenanigans are real.
Yeah, and I mean, look, a lot of times the rider, you don't need to fulfill it in full. That's why good, communication with the talents management is important, because if they have 50 things on the rider, a lot of times the DJ's going to land on a flight 20 minutes, an hour before the show up and leave right after, and you don't need to buy all this shit, because it could be hundreds, thousands of dollars. I mean, back in the day, I don't know what it's like now, but when Tiesto played Rehab, I mean, his rider, it probably cost us 10 grand just for the rider. And sorry to go back, Jennifer, you may ask a question. Robert, your sister would like to ask a question about a different topic. You can ask anything you want, Jen. You know that. Unless it's like.
Oh, go ahead.
What? No.
I was just going to say about riders, though, is that everything on a rider is negotiable. If they're asking for a certain type of turntable and you say, well, this is what, or they want a certain microphone. Well, this is what we have. Great. All right, we'll work it out. Everything is negotiable so long as it's discussed in advance. We're not going to get you're not going to get 17 bottles of 1942, but we will have a bottle of Don Julio 70 waiting for you.
Unless you're Little John, then you definitely get the 17 bottles of 1942.
Right. Fair enough, right? Absolutely. Oh, this is a Justin question.
Well, first I want to go back to Jay Sean. He asks, is there a general rule for when a DJ can change their rate? Is it based on time, crowd sizes? Well, in a way, the DJ doesn't even really set their rate. It's kind of set by the people that hire them. So you just kind of have to be realistic with where you are. Is it based on time? I mean, if you're playing the same venue every week, you're doing a good job, you can ask, yeah. Crowd sizes, kind of. But you can't do this in the beginning. But if you're an established DJ, the only way to maintain your rate or to get the rate you want is to say no to the rates you don't want. Yeah. Because if you just say yes, you'll never, like the buyers, very few buyers, and there are a couple because I work with them and they're incredible to work with. Very few buyers will volunteer a higher rate. They're not going to say, "Oh, you've been doing a great
budget."
Let me do. Right, but I do work with a couple that have approached me and said, "You know what, Romeo's doing a great job for us. I want to give him more money." And I was like, "Wow, amazing." So it does happen, but not often. So the only way to get your rate up is to say no.
Yeah,
you have to do a good job.
I've seen two strong arms kind of work for local, and I guess it works for out of town rates too. But it's if you're trying to get your rate up, and it's let's say a DJ is getting paid whatever $600, and they're like, "Yo, I want to be making $800." I'm like, "Cool," but just know if I go back with that and try to get that approved, and they say no, you have to be ready to walk. And 50-50 chance it works, and then the other alternative. But
then they never do. But then they never walk is the problem.
Some of them do that. Because here's part B to that. Part B to that is they're holding their cards, and if it's Club A and Club B, the two hottest clubs in town, and you're at Club A but you want to go to Club B and they've offered you more money, and Club A says no, so you're doing a leverage thing, and they'll just quit and go to the other club and get the higher rate. Again, how long that lasts, who knows? Because the other club could book you for a night and realize you suck and they made a mistake and not go back. So you just have to be ready to fucking play your poker face.
Yeah. I have 9 text messages. 7 of them are from buyers. I got to get off this podcast.
Yeah, they do work, man.
Go get Clayton some, get him some gigs. Go do your job.
I know. Yeah, this never really happens. Justin. What's that?
I got an extra mouth to feed now. Come on, man.
I know. Now the pressure's on.
Yeah.
But no, this is great. I'm so excited. I feel like it's coming back. I think the launch was great for us. I think it's going to breathe new life into the agency, and more importantly, into the guys on the roster. I think this is big.
And girls.
Yeah, this is. I use guys like
I know.
what is it? What's the word?
Use guys.
Yeah, it's just a general adjective. I get it. I'm just saying that you have some really good talent on that roster that is of the other gender as well.
Oh wait, I just saw Jen's question. You have a 2017 Topps card with John Cena promoting to Nikki Bella. Am I rich? I don't know the card. I could probably find out in about. Let's do it since we're here. I'll find out for you right now.
Wait, question. So is this trading card thing real? Because I've got like binders of like Jordan rookie card from like all that shit from back when I was a kid.
I will give you $4 for all of them.
No, see, I know that's bullshit.
All right. I will give you $40 for all of them.
I feel like I was like hibernating during the pandemic and I came out and everyone's like, oh, baseball cards are now hot again. And I'm like, wait a minute. I've literally got boxes of this shit in like mint condition.
Baseball cards are hot. If you want to go over it with me, we'll do this offline and we'll talk about it because.
Yeah, I really do. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I got back into it last year after being totally into it as a kid. I went through all my cards last year. I thought I was rich. Like legitimately, I thought I had tens and tens of thousands of dollars worth of cards.
What's
and
then
I actually did the research. Probably a lot of money, depending on the condition. It's all about the player and the condition.
Okay.
And then you go into the like, is it graded or is it not graded? There's yeah, no, Jen, you're not rich.
I can't believe this is
sorry.
a thing.
I mean, John Cena and Nikki Bella.
Why was that on a card? Like he's the wrestler, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen.
There's cards for everything.
Why don't we have baseball cards for the DJs?
It's legitimately something that we should.
That would be the best business card ever, right? Is that your roster has 3-day weekend, has baseball cards that, and limited runs that they could hand out to venues and hand out to people that come out and see if they increase in value over time.
That's motivation to get new headshots or like whatever, just in general.
Hey, Irene, can you tell me the name of this documentary? Because I would love to watch it. I mean, I have like 10 feet that way. I have a table that I have so many cards right now that I haven't sorted. And like the majority of these cards are like, the majority of them are not worth anything. But I probably have $10,000 worth of cards just on that table alone.
Where do you live? So
I
can
just
get $10,000 richer.
His website's on the address, or his address is on the website.
Oh my God, that's true. What am I doing?
What's wrong with you?
I don't know. I got to put a P.O. box or something. Just make one up.
Yeah. The next call I was going to make.
Jack of all trades. All right. I'm going to check that out. But yeah, like it's crazy right now. Like it's too much to get into right now because there's so much to talk about. But we'll talk about it offline because I can definitely help.
Cool.
Clayton, before we let you go, is there anything that you want to promote or plug?
Just the Yay 3-day weekend. Check it out.
It's an adjustment, absolutely.
I know the Yay throws me off because I'm always like Yay 3-day weekend.
Yeah, so
but it puts a smile on your face every time, doesn't it?
Does. I like the lightheartedness of it.
How do you? Yeah. You can't not say Yay without smiling. Yay.
I know. Yeah.
It's hard to say 3-day weekend without smiling.
Yay 3-day weekend.
I mean, some of the names that popped up on like the note, there's some good ones.
I have that.
I like mine the best. I like Zot's Tots.
my brother has a hashtag for his kids. Zot's Tots.
Perfect.
So I can't steal it.
Check out 3dayweekend.com. That's the plug.
We had a great name that I was all about, and it was called Mom and Pop.
It's pretty good.
I loved it, but there was already one.
I was going to say, like, how many websites were taken?
There was an agency called Mom and Pop.
Oh man.
But yeah. All right, I gotta end this. I gotta get back to work, pay some people some money. All right, dude. Guys. Thanks for coming in.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much for stopping in.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
All right, bye. Zilla, you want to take us out here?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, thanks for checking out the Old Guy in the Club podcast. After a 1 month hiatus, we do this Wednesdays. Hopefully, we'll be back next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't had a chance, make sure you check out www.yay3dayweekend.com. You'll also find the new agency handles at Yay3dayweekend on Facebook or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere you find it. It's the same handle all across of those. Don't forget to, follow me. You'll find me on my socials at Zilla on Air. All the other stuff I just mentioned, that's Justin. He runs those anyways. So yeah, that's really it. That's all I got to plug. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right, guys, and I mean that girls, gals, and dudes, guys. Yes, as Zilla said, thank you for coming. Glad we made it back after a month. Lots of fun stuff going on and more to come. So we hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye, guys. I'm not rating anybody. We're out of here.
Out.